things have progressed pretty well. I think there was no kind of, light switch moment, but I feel much better now. I feel like I've been throwing the ball really well, and I'm looking forward to getting back out and, getting back on the mound because I was pretty frustrated, and now I feel like things are, looking up, and I'm happy with the way the ball's come out of my hand and the feeling and sensation and whatnot. So, looking to get out there and kind of really start putting it back to the test.
Do the doctors have a determination of what exactly was the issue?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think that, there were a few things. There was no major issue in the sense. I think last time we talked, we had ruled out things like carpal tunnel and some nerve issues and whatnot. I did have some, vitamin deficiencies that we've addressed and whatnot that may have been an issue, and some based on some medication I had been taking and this and that. So I've been working on various things and just kind of, chipping away at it. Like I said, no real moment where like the fog cleared or anything, but it does seem like, every day, every week's been better than the last.
So when it looked like you were not going to be available for the start of the season on March 26th, will you be available for the start of this one?
That's my expectation. Unless something unforeseen happens. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I could pitch in a game today. So I'm really happy with where I'm at personally.
Thanks.
Hey, Andrew, can you describe what it was like to balance your two jobs during this work stoppage, both getting ready for the season, but also taking an active role in what a season would look like?
Yeah. Fortunately, not a whole lot of overlap. I was able to kind of get my workouts in the morning, and, the stuff based on, my role with the union seemed to take place in the afternoons and into the evenings more often than not. So, it was, there were days where I had full schedules, and there were days where essentially nothing happened. So it's just kind of, hit or miss depending on what was going on and, where we were at in various negotiations.
Andrew, did you ever doubt that there would be a season through all that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's still some doubt that we're going to have a season now. We're here, but I'm from Florida. I read my local paper every day, and I think it's, we're over 10,000 cases again. So, by no means is this a slam dunk. I think we're trying, we're going to give it our best effort, but, for me to sit here and say 100%, I think would be, a lie. So, were there various things that I thought could bring it down beyond the virus? Yeah, I think at some points I was a little frustrated with the way it was looking, but found our way through it, and we're here. And, now it's on, the onus is on essentially the players and the staff to do their part, and hopefully the rest of society as well to kind of get this thing under control so we can play some games and hopefully, just move forward in a positive direction all around.
Andrew, what do you see the biggest change? I know you guys have made a lot of changes with regard to the safety protocols, but for you trying to prepare, what changes will you try and make?
I think that where we're at right now, honestly, doesn't feel that weird. I mean, there's masks and there's efforts to distance, but right now it just feels like we're doing batting practice during the regular season. And, we've had hitting on the field and drills on the field with nobody in the stands before, but when somebody in a different uniform and an umpire step in and the games mean something, that'll be kind of the real eye opener, I think. The clubhouse is different. The process is different. We've only been here for a couple of days, but it's maybe not as drastically different as I expected. But I think that really will, the shocking moment will be when we play a game that counts.
Andrew, can you kind of walk through the process for you of making the decision to play this season? And would you say that that's a firm decision on your point that you're part of this point?
Yeah, certainly it's been in the news a lot. I think, Trout's comments, obviously, when you're, essentially the face of your league, comes out and says that. I think Buster Posey may have had some comments yesterday or this morning I read as well. I feel like there's a lot of ways to tackle that. In some ways, I feel like I have an obligation, to the sport and to my teammates and whatnot. But ultimately, the number one obligation is to my family. And, I have two young kids, and I have parents that are older, that probably wouldn't appreciate me saying that. But, the last thing I would ever want to do is be responsible for getting somebody sick. Even, one of you guys, one of our staff members, I don't know that that's a situation I would be very comfortable with. So I certainly, have had a lot of reservations on various things. I think that, the protocols and the safety measures we're taking are as good as they're going to get. And, I think that we are hopefully going to adapt and keep getting better with them. But, to say that there's some sort of perfect solution, it's not out there. At the end of the day, I'm a ball player. That's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. I want to be in the locker room with my teammates. I want to be a part of that. So it's a fine line. And, right now I'm absolutely comfortable with it, but I can appreciate guys that are having, second guesses or that have even opted out to this point. It's got to be very personal. And, I absolutely understand where they're coming from. It's, it's a tough world we're living in right now.
Hey, Andrew, we've heard some of those guys you mentioned, Trout and Posey, say that they are still kind of on the fence about maybe deciding to opt out. What's your understanding of how long that window lasts? Is it when games start that you guys have to make a decision in or out, or can that come during the season? How does that work as far as you understand it?
Yeah, I'd have to confirm this with, the union or MLB, but I'm under the impression you can opt out whenever. These are uncharted territories. And if, things are changing so fast, but between the time that we kind of came to an agreement and knew that MLB was going to set the schedule and the time I got on a plane to fly up here, my local area had changed drastically for the worse, to be honest. So I don't think there's any sort of time where, you can no longer opt out or anything like that. The player safety and the safety of their families is first and foremost. And, if something happens and you feel like that's the decision that you need to make, I don't believe that I'll ever be held against you.
Andrew, can you discuss the concept, the idea of accountability for all these players? You got everything from young people who might be going out on the town, as we're seeing in hockey, to older players who have families and such. We talk about accountability for your team, whether it's working out. Can you talk about accountability in this unique scenario?
Yeah, it's huge. If this is going to work, if Major League Baseball is going to have a season, it's going to be because players have been responsible and staff. It's not, the tier 1 and tier 2 and, the individuals that could potentially bring this into our, bubbles, the kind of, terminology everybody's loving to use right now. It's a large group of people, and the responsibility for them to, masks are obviously a hot topic in some places, and, I won't get too political on my thoughts or anything, but if we want to play, I think that we're going to have to be, very bought into the protocols that the union and Major League Baseball came up with. I think that, we're going to be uncomfortable. There's things that we're not going to want to do. And at the same time, there's a responsibility. There's people's health and safety. I don't want to bring it in and give it to somebody else who then gives it to somebody else and find out that somebody got really, really sick that, was doing their best to avoid it. And yet somehow I'm at fault. I don't want to be the one that brings down a season in which billions of dollars of people's livelihoods. And this is, that goes beyond player salary and owners' earnings. We have people in this room that are relying on a baseball season, I assume, to make ends meet. So it's there's a lot of responsibility. And, I think that there's going to be a little bit of luck, to be completely honest, in my opinion, but the responsibility part, if guys don't take that seriously, I don't think we have any chance.
Andrew, is that something you guys talk about? I mean, as far as like the possibility of there not being a season, the possibility of whether a player's going to opt out or not. I mean, if you had some of those conversations, do they change daily?
Not really. I mean, I think guys here, this group is committed. We all stayed in touch through it. And, these guys, we want to play. I mean, we've had meetings. We had a meeting today that was, essentially, the players kind of discussing some stuff that was going on. And, that responsibility issue came up. But, the vibe that I've gotten is that, I don't know you guys know better than me. What's the number of guys we have here? The guys that are here are bought into playing and doing that. That doesn't mean things won't change. And like I said, to an earlier question, that, if guys are entitled to watching the landscape change and maybe making different decisions for themselves. And I think everybody will respect that, within our team and across the league. But I personally haven't heard any of that around here. It's been more of, how do we pull this off? How do we make it work?
Hey, Andrew, one of the things that has kind of become a bit of a wrinkle with the new approach is the speculation it invites when players aren't here or when players don't show up. Obviously, you have to balance privacy with what is a very public game. how's the union wrestling with this? Do you have some ideas on how this is fixed?
Yeah, it's a tough situation because, you know, it means anytime you don't want to share something, the immediate conclusion everybody wants to jump to is that they have, you know, COVID. And my understanding, you know, just hearing some stories that, you know, people aren't being received too well by maybe having, you know, gotten the virus. But the reality is, you know, no matter how careful you are, anybody can be exposed, and that's unfair. So it's really hard. I don't know how that's going to evolve. I mean, I've seen some players have signed off. Other players have, to your point, maybe not been around, and everybody speculates. So I imagine that we'll get better at it as time goes on. I can appreciate the bind you guys are in, and I can appreciate the bind that players may be going through the situation they're in and not wanting to share that information. And, you know, it's, you know, just another thing to add to the list of, you know, what we have to navigate through this.
Thank you.
Hey,
Andrew, are you leaving your family behind in Florida? Will they be with you?
My family is here. My son is a first grader, so, you know, we're still kind of trying to figure out the school situation. They're here partially because they could be with me during the spring training time. We're not traveling, and, you know, it was a chance for them to spend time with us in a pretty safe spot. We thought, you know, again, I keep mentioning Florida. I think right now it's, you know, probably a better place to be here than it is down there for at least a little bit. And it's a new place for us to get out. You know, we're just like everybody else. We got a little bit of cabin fever. So, you know, they got a chance to come up here and play with different toys and stay in a different house, I guess. So how long that is, whether or not we do school or whatnot, is fluid, just like everything else. You know, I'd love for him to go to school, but I'm not going to put him at risk and, you know, do something I think is make a bad decision for that either. So we're sorting through that. There's a potential for homeschooling, and we'll get there when we get there. But for now, they're with me.
Can you appreciate just having one job on your plate right now? And do you think there'll be any residue of bitterness among the players that they didn't really get the settlement that they were?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the media is certainly, not to pin this on the media, it's been portrayed as, you know, this was, you know, the resolution of this was some horrible, ugly thing. The reality is, I think the system worked. Do I think that there were outcomes that were, you know, available along the way that were better, that were maybe more beneficial and more cordial? Personally, yes. But the reality is, I think the system worked, and, you know, our agreement eventually was acknowledged and held up. And I think that was important to the players. And, you know, for us as players to expect everybody, even you guys, to understand, you know, why everything happens and what's going on behind the scenes is unreasonable. The reality is, I think that I'm comfortable with the way it went down. I think that there were some places that maybe I wish things had gone a little bit differently. I think that our fans don't really love seeing us go back and forth about money. That should be common sense by now, but unfortunately it played out very publicly. But ultimately, you know, I think that we have health and safety measures that are on the books that are good for players. That was our number one priority. And, you know, we have a season, and it's all, you know, this is a crazy world. We're doing the best we can. So as far as it carrying over, you know, I don't know that we can answer that until we get there, but I don't expect it to. It's kind of unique on individual thing. And, you know, the role of the union is, as unpopular as it may be at certain times, is to, you know, represent the players and take care of them as a group to the best extent they possibly can, and to protect their rights, to protect things like their health and safety. So I think that was accomplished. And, you know, there's always times when you're going to feel right about it and maybe take some heat. And I think we're willing to do that. I know I am, but I'm very confident in the way we handled it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a straight up baseball question? The runner at second might be part of your world here in extra innings, with a game on the line, and we saw you guys practicing that. What ways do you have to defend against that, and what's your feeling about that rule?
To defend it, you know, it's try to find a way to shut it down, and that's you know, strikeouts are going to be good. You know, it'll be interesting to see if teams choose to bunt. I believe it was in the World Baseball Classic, but I think I may have been warming up for it and it didn't end up happening. We scored or something like that, but I don't believe that we saw it in any of our games. So we had a big discussion about it. I don't know if it was I think it was just the last board meeting. And, guys have been using it in the minor leagues for a year or two. And honestly, I was surprised that a lot of them said it kind of worked. It gave a little bit of excitement at the end of the game. It essentially avoided the 14 and 15 inning games. And it maybe wasn't as big of a, kind of a circus and distraction as maybe they had expected. I can absolutely appreciate changing the rule. I'm all for, I think we have a game that's pretty darn near perfect, and trying to change the game, rules to meet whether it's television or this or that or whatever is not something I'm usually a fan of. So we'll see how it goes. I think with what's going on this year, there's probably no better time to try something out, to give things a test run. I hope it goes well. I can understand not wanting to play 17, 18 inning games. Off days are going to be limited. It's going to be kind of a mad dash to the end. The way that can affect teams for 5-6 games is, pretty clear. So we'll see. I guess I'm probably as old fashioned as I think I am. I might be one of the people more willing to embrace it.
Andrew, I have another not baseball question. Sorry. Have the union and the league yet sorted out what the situation is going to be with vesting options like the one that you have? Do you know yet how many games you have to pitch this season? Still for next year?
No, honestly, that became a story. I don't know, was that 4 or 5 days ago, maybe a week ago. I haven't heard anything. It's not resolved, to my understanding.
Hey, Andrew, in regards to your baseball work, what did you work on during this time off? Were you in bullpen still tweaking with things, or how did you kind of approach it to be able to say now that you're ready to go?
Well, yes, we knew so little. I think when we went home, there was this kind of impression that obviously in hindsight seems so silly that this is going to be a couple weeks or something. And it just kind of turned into a continuation of the off season, to be honest with you. We had shutdowns in Florida. I was lucky to, have a little bit of space in my yard for a while when things were really closed down, and, then have access to a gym as they started to open up. It's, I know we got a little bit of spring training, and I really, I think I pitched in 1 game. So, for me, it's just kind of been the longest off season ever. And I was able to throw bullpens. I got 1 live batting practice, and then things kind of fell apart locally for us, and that, our access to fields and whatnot shut down. So just working as consistently as possible and making the best we could out of it. So, fortunately I have, a lot of fellow ball players in town, and we were able to kind of, get a pretty reasonable amount of work in. I wish it had been more, but there's probably a lot of people that didn't have access to what I did. So I'm grateful for that.